this computer. Okay, should be now recording. Does it record? Did you all get a notification that I'm recording? Yes, cool. Okay, so let's go over, move this a little away. So there are like different terms floating around related to Git. So Git and GitLab and GitHub, and sometimes they're being used, interchangeably. So the first one that you might hear is Git. So Git is the software. It's a version control software. You usually run it on your local machine, and it allows you to track changes in files. And the kind of novelty of Git is that it actually tracks differences between files, which makes it very sparse in terms of, the amount of content you have to store. And it's really, when it came out, it was kind of a novelty, this type of software. Then we have, Git you mainly use with the command line or like the GitHub desktop tool that we're going to look at today. Then we have GitHub, that's the platform. So later after Git, basically GitHub was invented. It was first like an own company. I think it has been acquired by Microsoft a couple of years ago, but it's now basically the platform where you can share your code. You have this connection between your machine and the online platform that we're going to go over today as well. And then you can collaborate with people, and people can contribute to your code. So that's GitHub. Not to confuse with GitLab, which is kind of a competitor. But yeah, that you can also use GitLab, but GitHub is definitely more well known. And then Bitbucket, then another competitor does a similar thing, is by the company Atlassian. But yeah, also something different, but does the same thing basically. Yes, and then so the history of version control. So it started all with a kind of the need to control versions of files and code. And at the beginning, we had only this local version of basically Git. So you were able to track changes in your software on your local machine. But the problem was that you could not really collaborate because everybody had it on their own machine, and there was different versions of files and directories were stored on your local disk, and changes were tracked by copying entire directories and creating multiple versions of the project. So there was the really old ways of, I think we've all done that, this kind of, final and document. And then, so then we had the first actual version control systems. They were introduced. Here, basically, it started that many developers could collaborate. However, there were still some limitations, such as that they had needed to be, like the local machines needed to be connected by a central server. So not everybody had access to that. And then basically DVCS addressed some limitations of that by allowing our developers to have local copies of the entire repository. And then the most prominent DVCS is Git, that was created by Linus Torvalds in 2005. And this allowed for efficient branching, merging, and offline work. And there are also other DVCSs such as Mercurial and others as well. And then we had basically GitHub, the platform where all this was managed via the internet. And and then, so enough of history. So let's start with looking at GitHub. And I'll show you probably mine, but like GitHub is basically structured in repositories. And GitHub is basically divided, like there's one major division in these repositories. There are repositories that you own because you created them and you added files there. And there are repositories that are there that you can look at, but that you cannot really manipulate because they're not owned by you, and that's important. So the first challenge for the day is you all log into your GitHub account. So go to github.com and log in. And then you should, if you click on your icon here, which should be some kind of checkerboard, probably if you haven't really done much in GitHub, and you can go to your profile and then you get to something like this. Here's probably a bit emptier, depending on how much you've done on GitHub. I'll give you a couple of minutes, and if you could give me a little heads up, or like, yeah, when you're once you're done. So yeah, you see here, you have different tabs here. So you have your overview tab, that is your profile. And then you have, once you've created repositories, they're under repositories. Like I said, there's other tabs. So for example, projects, you can do like, make little Kanban boards of, let me find a nice one, maybe. Yeah. So you can also use it for project management, actually. So it's a nice feature that I was rather recently added. What I wanted to show you is this search bar up here. And here you can browse entire GitHub. And let's say you're interested in open science. And you type that here, then you find repositories of other people that have open science in their either like repository name or in their code or in their issues. That's little notes that you can write to other users. You see basically here the repositories are always structured in a way that you see here the name of the repository owner and then the name of the repository here. You can, for example, and it also shows you, like you have these star features here, so other people can star a repository, and this one seems to be really popular. It has a lot of stars. You also usually see the most used programming language of the repository, and you can, for example, go, let's go into this one, and then you can have a look. And very often people provide a lot of really useful resources, especially. So this person here basically provides an entire introduction to data science. I would recommend having a bit of a browse, because there's really useful material, especially if you want to learn. It's really useful. So we've done that. Yep. So then we are going to move on, and we are going to create our first repository. So there's two ways for you that you can do that. The first one is let me go back to my profile actually, doesn't really matter, but so you can click on this create new button and click new repository. That's the first one. And the second one is, I think you can also, under your repositories, you have this green new button here. And I would ask you, so this is the repository for the website, actually. I would ask you to click on either of those. So either up here or here, and create a new report. Click on this button. And it asks you for a couple of things. So here it says the owner of the repository. And if you're not part of any organizations and don't have any other accounts, probably this is just your username. Like I am part of a couple of organizations. For some of them, I have writing rights, so I could create repositories under them. But for now, it's probably just you. Then you type a repository name. I'm going to call this test repo for now. You can also add a description, but it's optional. I'm not sure. Usually, it used to be that if you don't have a paid plan, you don't have the option to make your repository private. But I think that has changed now. I think everybody now has can at least have some private repositories. So private basically means that only you can see it. That's useful if you have code or data that you use, shouldn't be publicly available. I still would, sensible data I would still never upload to GitHub, but sometimes you have code for analysis, for example, where you don't feel comfortable that other people see that before it's published or something, then you can make it private. Then only you can see it, and also it cannot be browsed by other people. But for now, I'm going to make this public. Then you click this add a README file. We're going to go over the README in a second. And we'll leave the rest that it is and just click create repository. And then it already moves you into the repository. Have we all done that? Yeah, cool. Okay. So then let's explore. We've all done that. Let's explore our repository. So we told the repo that, when we created it, it should be initialized with a README, and the README is basically the doormat of your repository. It has by default a repository name in it, but you can change it. And usually the README is the first thing that anybody sees when they, navigate to your repository. So you put information like what's the purpose of the repository. Maybe it's code that is related to a paper. Maybe you're providing some analysis or, some whatever you do. You would also add links, add external links, or you can add images. Just to give an overview of the repository. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do make our first change to the repository. But first, I wanted to introduce you to the README. So readme.md is a special type of text language. It ends in an MD, and it's a very the kind of style and the way you work in this language. It stands for Markdown. It's actually very simple. So, for example, a hash means a first level heading, and that's rendered like this. 2 hashes is a second level heading. It's rendered like this. A third level heading is indicated like this and rendered like this. You can add images by having, for example, you can upload an image into this repository and then link to it, and then give it a title. So this might or might not be my cat. You can also add, like I said, external links here. Similarly, so this would render to this link to the GitHub website. And I've linked here to official resources on the Markdown language. But yeah, so the readme.md is always in Markdown language. So now we are going to talk about commits. So commits are annotated, labeled snapshots of your files or your repository. And they're really useful if you want to check the history of a file. And you see that here. So let's say we have a document called text.txt. And we create this document, and then we write the first paragraph of our whatever manuscript. So then we create a commit, and the commit basically snapshots the current state of the file and adds this label. So then we know, okay, after the first paragraph, we have this together, this text file, and we have a labeled snapshot of our file. And then we say, okay, we want to edit the first paragraph. So we make some changes, and then we again make this snapshot of our file with a label. And then we make some more changes, and we make, another snapshot, basically. So the important part, there's 2 important parts. The first one is our text file is always text.txt. So, that's all we have in our repository. And the second important part is we can revert back to the state of the file that, we had. Let's say we're not really happy with the second paragraph, or we're not really happy with our edits of the paragraph, but we didn't really know what they were before. It doesn't matter. We can just, change back to this kind of state. And that's, I guess, really useful because it reduces the number of final text files in our repository quite a bit. So the other really interesting thing is Git actually will not allow you to save anything in a repository without making a commit. So they really force you to make these snapshots and also to label them. And we are going to actually now change the information in our README file. And the way we do this is here. We click on this pencil button. That makes it editable, so we can just add whatever. And then you see here, you can cancel the changes, but in order to save them, you actually need to commit them. So if you click this green button here, this little window here pops up, and it already suggests a commit message. You can change that, but I will just leave update readme.md. You can even add more description of changes, and you can leave this as it is, but then you basically commit the changes, and then you see the changes here. But also what you see, what it actually did is created this hashtag, and that's basically part of your history now. So now you see basically we have actually two changes to our repository. So this was the initial commit, like when we created a repository, but now we have this change of like we updated the readme.md. If we go on this one, yeah. So let me see, dismiss. Let me go back. And if we go on, we click onto this, it also shows us exactly what we've changed. And the way you read this is basically here. I deleted this one. Is deleted. It deleted this one, and I added three lines to this file. So just to show you again, you do this, navigate here by clicking on history, and it tells you exactly, yeah. So because people make so many commits, you get basically this hash here. It's like, this very unique identifier of your commit. But it tells you also when you did it, and then if you click on the history button, you see all the changes. Now I only have two, like the first initial commit, like when I created the repository, and the update that I just made. And yeah, so then basically you have made your first commit. Let me see. Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah, so like I said, Git will force you actually. Yeah, but let's then maybe move on to branching. So branching is another really cool feature of Git. And it allows you to work on different parts and versions of a repository at the same time. So by default, if you create a repository, it is initiated with a main branch. If you find really old repositories, they might still have a master branch, but like for very reasonable reasons, master was changed to main. Yeah, but let's go over branching now. So we had before in our main branch this kind of little history where we have made changes to our text.txt file. Let's say here we are not really sure whether we want to go on to add a second paragraph, or maybe we actually want to delete our first paragraph and like rewrite it. So what we can actually do is we create a branch. Basically, branching means we copy the history. So we're here, we create a branch and we copy the whole, it basically creates an alternate timeline. So we make a copy of this, history. And then we can go from here on, basically, yeah, like I said, create an alternate timeline. We can delete the first paragraph, commit that, rewrite the first paragraph, and we go back to the main branch and actually do here, add our second paragraph. And at this point here, we can switch between the two interchangeably. So we have now both these timelines, and we can, revert back and forth between them. And yeah, and let's now maybe do that. So create a new branch. So let's go to the code tab. That's the main tab. And you see here up here that we are in the main branch. We have one branch in our repository. And we can click on this. And then it says here, find or create a branch. So you can actually create test branch. And it says create branch, test branch from main. I'll do that. And it already switches me to the test branch. And at the moment, because it's literally just a copy of my main branch, it also tells me the branch is up to date with main. So I can go back to the main branch. It's the same as the test branch, but now I have two branches. But let's change that. Let's actually make them differ. So let's move to the, let me say what I'm doing here. Switch to a new branch. Yeah, so we are changing the test branch. Similarly, we're going onto this little pencil button and we change the README file in the test branch. Commit this. Yep. So now I have this here. I'm in the test branch and I have changed my README file. And now I can go back to the main branch. And it should actually, yeah, so it's smart. It basically tells me that I have changes in the test branch that differ from the main branch. And it already suggests me to create a pull request, but we'll go over that in a second. But yeah, as you see, basically, I have now two alternative timelines. In the other one, I have this added, adding my cat, and in this one, I don't. And I can move between the two versions of it. Yeah. Yeah, and so like I said, branches are a good way to test and edit changes to a repository or to code and see whether you like them. You can also, if you write code, for example, you can test it, see whether it works, develop your analysis, and yeah, and if you don't like it, your changes will never affect your actual analysis in the main branch. And different branches can develop independently and in parallel of each other. Yeah. So now, are there any questions at this point? Yep.
Johanna, so suppose you create a branch and you make changes on that branch, and then you also simultaneously made some changes or updates on the main branch.
Yep.
How do you use GitHub to merge your changes from the branch and your changes without removing your changes from either?
Yeah, so this is called a merge conflict, and we're going to go over that as well because this can happen, and yeah, it can get quite messy, even like in these simple examples. But like, there's two ways. So basically, GitHub will allow you to either accept like one version, like each one branch, or it will also, you can make manual edits to accept both. But I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, it's a good point. But let's first talk about, are there any other questions at this point? Anything else? Okay, so let's talk about pull requests. So we are at the moment basically at this timeline where we have, parallel branches. But let's say we're really happy about the changes that we made in our test branch, and they are so great that they should actually be integrated in our main branch. So GitHub makes it really easy for us. You can just click this button here, compare and pull request. Yes, so click that. And then it shows you what it's going to do. So it's going to merge the changes from the test branch into the main branch. So it's indicated by this little arrow. You can also change the direction, actually. But if you do that, in this case, it will overwrite your changes, because, the test branch is one step ahead of the main branch. So be careful. But in this case, it also tells us that there are no merge conflicts because we've literally just added a line. So you can just add the line from the test branch and add it to the main branch, basically. There's nothing is going to be overwritten. You can also, it needs you to write this down basically as a commit or like a pull request. And then you click here on, you could add a description here, like if you make some more substantial changes. But you click on create a pull request. And it runs some checks usually. And it tells you, great, this is able to merge. And then you have to confirm that you want to merge this pull request. And so this is now also really special because you own the repository. It's your repository. You are able to merge this pull request. If you want to contribute to someone else's code, like you can't do this. You create the pull request and then you wait because you can't merge it. Like it's up to the other person that you make, you suggest changes to accept your pull request. But at the moment, because you own the repository, you can just merge it yourself. So confirm merge. Yay. And then it tells you we've merged this. And then if you go to code, you should be able to see that we have now also in the main repository, this little line that we added. Also, no, just a quick, so on the branch name. So usually the main repository is the repository that people that, visit your repository look at. So it's the outward facing repository. Usually it's the repository that you want to be, the branch that you want to be most polished. So if you make changes and like exploratory stuff, do it like in a different branch because people will most likely look at your main branch first and assume that this is the most developed version of your repository. Yay.
So Johanna?
Yeah.
So the purpose of the pull request is to merge both versions of the code you created.
Yes, it's basically to update branches between each other in this case. Yeah. Does that make sense? Or
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But like I said, like in this case, basically we're working on our own repository, right? So so it's quite easy. But like you could use examples like this if you want to, like let's say you want to track your analysis and you develop it to a certain point, but then you're not really sure, you want to do some exploratory stuff. So you create a different branch, you try stuff out, and then you merge it or not. Or like you write a manuscript and you make changes and you're not really certain about the changes. And there's even there's even like a more advanced version. So you can't really do that in GitHub Online, but in the command line, you basically can even select certain commits that you then want to merge back into the main repository. So you could be really selective about changes, but that's a bit more advanced. But so we've done that. So the question is like, why is it called pull request? And like I said, we are now working on our own repository where we're merging our own pull requests because we have the right to do so. Usually, if you work on someone else's code, you don't have this right. So you have to really ask the person to pull your changes into their repository and they make the decision. You just create a pull request and it pops up on their repository or on their GitHub platform, and they can review what you've done and then accept it or decline it. But that's why it's called pull request. So you're asking the other person to pull your changes into their repository. And the kind of process of that is, so you push and they hopefully pull. Yeah.
Can I ask another question? So are pull requests different for people who are put as collaborators on the repository versus someone who's forked the repository, and both of them have to request permission from the owner?
So it depends usually on the rights that you have in the repository, whether you're allowed to merge it yourself. You will see that because at some point, if you don't, you just can't merge it. It's in general, it's good practice if you work on someone else's code, even if you have the right to merge it, to do something like ask for a review. So you basically, I can show me maybe, do I have something like this here? Maybe somewhere, peas and chocolate. So it would basically, no, I don't have any pull requests open, but there's a way to ask for a review of the code. So you would basically assign reviewers. They're being suggested based on, you know, who owns the repository, and they get these notification in their notification kind of bar of GitHub. And then they approve basically your changes. And only then, even if you have the right to do so, you would wait for that, or they would merge it in. So that's good practice, actually, especially if you make substantial changes. Yeah. 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 Cool. So yeah, then Rini has already brought up another term, which is forking. So now we are going into the waters of working on someone else's repository. So like I said, you can work on repositories that you own, but not directly on other people's repositories. And in order to be able to work on them, you have to create a copy of other people's repositories in your account. And that process is called forking. So basically the idea would be like, I have all this history in my account, and then someone else actually wants to contribute to this. So they copy this whole thing, like with all the branches, and make a copy in their account. And I'll show you like what that, for example, looks like. So I've here created a fork, my supervisor's account of further repository. And then you see here, it's now under my account, and I have all the rights that I need to in order to make changes to the code. But I also see it's actually forked from my supervisor. Yeah, and in the original repository, you can see like the number of forks and who forked it either up here or also down here. So you see this repository has been forked quite a bit. And I would ask you now to fork a repository that I usually use in this case. It's called a Git course training repo, and I'll put it into the chat. Because then we are going to practice making pull requests to that one. Let me see, meeting chat. So if you click on this link, you should be directed to this repository. And I, of course, can't really clone this repository because it's my repository. But I'll show you how you clone a repository. Let me see. What am I doing here? Where is my Git course? Too many windows. Yeah. So navigate to this repository and fork the repository in your account. So you click on the fork button on the main page of the repository. And then you can leave everything the way Git suggests and just click on create fork. And then what you should see is that you have the Git course training repo. You can see that it's probably forked from like a jump rope, but you should have it under your name. And I'll give you some time to do that. Have you all forked the repository? Cool. Now, because you have the repository under your name, you can actually make changes to it. And I would now ask you to go to the basically to add a file with your name and add your favorite animal in the file. So go to the Add File tab, create a new file with your name, and then write what is your favorite animal and commit your changes. Are we all there? Or do you need more time? Okay, so like I said, the changes that you've made now in your fork only exist in your fork, not in my fork. So my repository actually has no pull requests and nothing. So basically they're only existing in your fork. Yeah, I see actually more forks. It's good. So you're probably realizing like we have now actually a lot of copies of this repository in a lot of different places. And so Git basically introduced like different names for different types of repositories. So the fork that you have in your account is called origin. And the fork that is in my account is called the upstream. So you can change the origin, but you cannot change the upstream without making a pull request and asking me to accept it. And so that's what we're going to do now. So you're going to create pull requests to my repository. So you consider your changes so meaningful that they should be integrated in my upstream repository. And you should be able to see in your repository that your main branch is one commit ahead of my branch and my fork. And you can click on this contribute button and open a pull request. And it will ask you probably to write some statement, and then if you want to, you can just create a pull request. And I should be able to see them popping up here if you create them. Oh yeah, I see 4 pull requests. Lovely. 5 pull requests. Nice. And because, so you were kind of lucky because I didn't make any changes to my repository while you were creating your pull request. But of course, like in real life, while you're working on whatever you want to, change, it could be that I made also changes to my repository. And this is usually the cause of merge conflicts. So it's always good practice to try to hit. So basically, it would then tell you that your repository is this amount of commits ahead. So that's your changes, but also this amount of commits behind my repository. And it's always a good practice to click sync fork. So that will basically pull the changes that I made in before you try to make a pull request, so that you're at least up to date with what I've changed in the meantime, because otherwise there will be terrible clashes. It can still be terrible clashes, but at least, yeah, it's good practice to sync the fork before you actually make the pull request. Okay, we have 6 pull requests here. That's fine. Like you can also, if you are a bit behind now and want to just do it late, that's also fine. I will keep monitoring the repository a bit, and then we can add all your animals. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is issues. And issues are there any questions? Do you need more time? Anything I can help you with? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So issues are basically little notes that you can write to the developer of the other repository. And it's a good practice to basically, if you create a pull request, to write a little issue saying that, I've basically created this pull request and this is what I've done. Sometimes it's also that the other way around, that you have issues, like issues are little notes that people open to say, oh, this needs to be changed to the repository. So then you can work on that, create a pull request and link back to that issue. So I would now like you to basically all open an issue and linking back to your pull request. And the way you do that is like you navigate to my issues. So my issue tab, click on new issue. And then you have something like adding my animal or something. But what I wanted to show you is that if you click the hash here, you get a drop down of all the pull requests that are currently there. So you can actually link yours. So I have created this issue. And then, so if I click submit here, like I don't do that, but it will create a link to the actual pull request. And I would like you to do that now. Yeah, nice. And you can create issues both on your own repository or on the upstream repository, so my repository. But if you want to communicate with me, then it's best to do it on my repository because I'm not going to check your fork. You can also add people. So if you just like with an add basically symbol, you can add usernames. So then they will get notified about the issue. So I'm just checking here. Perfect. Very happy about this. Nice cat. I still have some old ones. I need to merge them in actually. Lovely. So then in large projects, the number of issues can actually exponentially explode. So let's go to the scikit-learn one, maybe. Learn. It's not the one I wanted. Scikit-learn. Repositories. Let me see. sklearn maybe. Let's go to the Turing-Way one. Blah, 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 blah. The Turing-Way book. Yeah, so you see, for example, in this one, and this is a low number of issues for this repository, but you can add labels to the issues, and you can also filter them based on the labels. For example, here you see that you have several ones for 2018, and then you can filter them based on that. And you can, let's see, create labels, I think here. Yeah, by just clicking on the label button, and then if you have a new label, and then you can tag your issues. But it's really good because there's an event called Hacktoberfest, where people are encouraged to create 4 pull requests, and several repositories usually participate, but then you can search for Hacktoberfest. October, let's see, yeah, Hacktoberfest 2024. So these are issues that you could work on for the Hacktoberfest, for example. But I wanted to show you that. Yep. Done that. Cool. So then we've been working on GitHub Online for, all the time now. And now we're basically going to move to the connection between your local machine and GitHub, because probably you would like to upload code from your local machine. And I think this would be a good time for like a short break, just of 5 minutes. Everybody have some tea or whatever you want to have. So I would say we're back at the hour, or 1 minute after the hour. And yeah, feel free, I'm hanging out here. Feel free to ask me questions.
Johanna, can I
Yeah.
ask, so I got, when I sent the pull request, I got all these emails from your account, but through an AI bot, a Sorcery AI bot. I don't know if you had to do something to, which says, I think it is like evaluating it for good practice. Like, oh, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. And that was kind of cool. Like, is that something you had to activate, or is this?
No, I don't think so. Are you? You got
It's
that
pretty
too.
cool because, I mean, cool in the sense that it, if you make some overt documentation errors or something like that, it'll tell you, and it, like, you've not done a very good job sending a full request.
Okay. You have never done anything with sorcery, right? Probably
I
yourself.
don't think so.
Okay.
And between,
Yep.
yeah.
I just signed up for sorcery recently, and I was not aware that it would do that. So I might actually like look into that. Thanks for letting me know. But it's probably on my end. I looked into it because apparently it's like a new AI code thing. So I thought it was more something like Copilot, where it corrects your code. I was not aware that it was doing that. But yeah, cool. I mean, if it was helpful, that's great. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, it does some of the sort of boilerplate work for you. Like, some of these things were not done. So
Okay, cool. I'll look into that. Yeah, maybe then I have like a lot of really nice pull requests, probably. Maybe I'll have a look at them. Nice. Cool.
Johanna?
Mm-hmm.
I was late, so sorry for asking this now, but so tomorrow it will be the same presentation?
Yep, entirely the same. Yep.
I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yes, I also got an email from Sorcery
Okay,
AI. Yes.
I need to look into that. I'm sorry for that. Like, yeah, I mean, if it was, yeah, it's good if it's helpful, but then I also don't want to spam my, you know, my collaborators with
No, but
emails. Yeah. Yeah, that's the funny thing about
I'll probably
no, go. Yep.
I'll probably request to log in Zoom again through another computer because I think it's easier if I have like two screens at the same time.
Yep.
So just turn off my my mic and
Yeah, no
probably try
problem.
to.
Yeah.
There will
Yes,
be two
Johanna.
Adrian.
Yeah.
Joanna, I have to go too. I have a bit of an emergency in the clinic. And I'm gonna come back tomorrow. I definitely am gonna need two screens too. I wasn't aware. I can't really page tab back and forth on the laptop I'm on. It's not
Yeah.
working out too well.
Yeah.
But can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
It wouldn't allow me to make a fork because I had to step away actually. Because it says that I don't have uh an existing it's telling me I do not have I'm not a member of any organization. Why is it saying that?
Probably because you would have to make sure that your username. Are you logged into your GitHub account?
I am.
So then you would probably just have to make sure that your username is in the fork. So let me just see. Yeah, I'm not sure, but like you have to make sure that your username is in the like in the let me see if I can show you. That's not what I mean. Let me find um some repository, whatever. You have to make sure your username is in here. Was it in here? So if you can navigate out of this, basically. If this was empty, then that might happen. I'm not sure whether that solves it, but that's my first guess.
Okay, let me check that.
Yeah. We can also maybe tomorrow, if you come back, we can have a look. So either, yeah, you go through it again tomorrow, or we can also have a look that you share a screen.
Yeah, it's my username's there. I don't know, but
That's weird.
it's exactly what. Okay. Yeah, like you said. All right. I was just curious before I left.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
No problem.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Let me not do this here. Okay. Let's move on actually, so that we can finish on time. So, like I said, we've now been working on GitHub Online, which is nice. But if you have some code or some analysis that you've already been working on and you want to now start tracking your analysis, it's important that you have basically a connection between your computer and GitHub Online. And so there's a two-way street between GitHub Online and your local machine. The first one would be that you have an existing repository on GitHub Online and you now want to work in it on your local machine. So that would be top down. You're trying to make a clone of this repository to your local machine. The second one would be that you already have an existing repository on your local machine and you now want to start, having it on GitHub Online so that other people can work with it. Yeah, so we're going to go over both these cases. And so the kind of GUI that we're going to work with is GitHub Desktop. So it's was created by GitHub, and it basically allows the interaction between Git and GitHub, and it's a tool created by GitHub. So there are other tools. I usually use VS Code, which has a very rich Git and GitHub integration. But to start, it's usually quite useful to use GitHub Desktop because it's very easy to use. And VS Code can sometimes be overwhelming. if you do not have GitHub desktop installed, that's fine, because it's rather quick to install, and it will suggest you to install it once we clone the repository. So we're now starting basically with the first case, making a clone, so a local copy of a repository on our local machine. So there's basically these cases. We have here this whole timeline of our repository, and we're now basically downloading this repository onto our local machine. And the way it will look like, it's just a folder with all the files in it. But let's do that. So you basically go to your fork of the GitHub training repo, and you click the code button here. And then I actually think this will look a bit different now, but it will. Oh no, it won't actually. So you go onto the local tab, and it says open with GitHub desktop. I'm actually also going to do that. Not this one.
Johanna,
Yeah.
can you go just a little slower for this one?
Yep. I'll do it with you actually.
You'll have to download it.
Yep, I'll do it with you. So I'm going to the GitHub course training repo. So you go to your fork. So it should say, oh, I'm not on my fork actually. I'm on the wrong forks. Yeah. So you go to your fork of the repository, and then it has here this green code button. You click that. And then you have here, open with GitHub desktop, and you click that. And then if you do not have GitHub desktop installed, it will prompt you to do so. So you just do that. And it should be rather quick. So I have it installed. So I click on open GitHub desktop. And for me, it opens right away, but I'll wait for you guys. Is it working?
Yeah, I have a pop-up window. It says clone a repository, and there's some options on selecting the local path. Do I just put it wherever?
You can put it wherever you want. For example, I think I have it under documents. And I think it will create actually a folder GitHub. So I have all my GitHub repos under documents GitHub, but you can also just put it under documents anywhere. I've also
Okay.
this as well. Just put it anywhere. It doesn't matter. It's a small repository, so it won't matter.
I stepped forward to the next thing, and it asks if it says there's changes on the branch, and asks if I want to contribute to the parent project or my own purposes.
There's changes on the. Have you forked this repository, cloned this repository before?
No.
Okay, then say yes. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, I think. You're not going to destroy anything at this point.
So Johanna, I'm a little behind.
Yeah.
Just clone the repository.
Yep. So you navigate to your fork. That's the wrong one. You know, to your fork, and click on code. So you're under the code button here, under the code tab. Click on the green code button and open with GitHub desktop. And then also like for the rest of you, the way it basically looks like, it's like, I think I have it under GitHub. I have it under GitHub. Yeah, so it's literally just a folder with all the MD files in it. So it looks like the repository, but it's just a folder. So this is where it. Are we all there? Okay. Yell if you need more time, or if I should explain it again, that's fine. But yeah, interrupt me if I'm going too fast. So I wanted to show you the interface basically. And this interface here is just for you know, committing and the Git part of changing your files. It's not a code editor. You see that here, basically, if you want to make changes to this repository here, you have to open it in a code editor. So for you, this could look different. So my main code editor is Visual Studio Code. You could have Atom is not a thing anymore. Sublime here, you could have RStudio here. That's fine. But so basically, if you open this, it just will open the folder that I just showed you with all the files in it, so that you can click on them and make changes. So that's that. You can also, you know, if you don't know where your folder actually, you know, landed when you cloned it, you can have here the show and finder button. So you can do that, and it shows you where your repository is on your computer. And then you can also just click, go back to GitHub and look at the repository there. So then if you click that, it goes back to your fork. Similarly, you see here, it shows you the repository name. It shows you that you're on the branch main. And this button would allow you to pull in changes that you make on GitHub Online. If you do it now, hopefully nothing has changed. So no local change and no changes, basically nothing is happening. And it also tells you that you haven't actually made any changes to the repository locally. So no local changes, no change files, but it shows you the history actually of your file from GitHub Online. So you have a history here, but no local changes. Yeah, I think Atom actually somehow died. It's very sad. But I think Sublime Text, someone said like Atom is no longer, yeah, I know. It's sad. But okay, so let me just see. So we've gone over this pretty much. Yeah, so we are now going to change that. The first thing that we're going to do is make changes to our local repository. And like I said, you can't do that in this here. So you need to open your files in an actual code editor. And then, yeah, just select, probably you only have your name, but you can click on your name and add some changes, like add another line. Like I have a couple of Johannas here. So add something to one of the files, and then importantly, you have to save it. Always save it. And once you save it, what happens is that it appears immediately here as changes. So basically, it shows you immediately that you made changes to the file. And then if you want to commit it, basically, you have here the option to commit these changes that you made to your local repository. And you commit it to the main branch, or like in this case. And then it again says no local changes. I've committed all my changes. But it also tells me now that my local repository is now one step advanced to my online repository. And it already suggests me to push this to the online repository. So basically sync the two repositories. So you can do that. And then you should actually see it in your online repository. Let me see. Yep, I see it here, my commit. So this is how you get files from your local repository to your online repository. The other way, what you can also do is just adding them using this plus button. You can also just upload files. That's another way. So if you don't want to go through this like whole connection thing and want just to add files, you can just upload them here. And you have like a drag and drop option and commit them directly into the repository. Are there any questions at this point?
Yeah, I was not able to do this part, but I'll see if I can check the recording and try again later.
Yes, okay, no problem. Where did you get stuck?
It says when I opened in RStudio that the file was moved or deleted, so I couldn't change anything.
Okay, so then yeah, you probably, that's weird. So you either moved it or it didn't download. So if you would have first have to check where your folder actually is. So if you go into this, check where it is, and then open RStudio, like, make this your working directory and then make changes.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, so that was one direction, getting changes from my local repository into GitHub, GitHub Online. So let's now just, to make changes in our online repository. So I'm going into this file here. I see here, this is the change that I made from my local repository. It's now in GitHub Online. I make another change. And I commit this. And then once I've done this, I go back to my GitHub Online, and then I click the Fetch Origin button. And it tells me that I have changes in my online repository. And it already suggests me that I can pull them down. So I'll do that. And then they should be here. Let me check where's my VS Code? It's just a different one. Yeah, here it is. So yeah, we've done that. Yeah, and okay, I'm saying that again, but like it can get quite messy because we have a lot of copies of this file, of this repository now, and different, people might have different copies of of the same repository, and each of them can manipulate it independently, both on GitHub and then on your local machine. And we can have branches of the repository. Yeah, so it's always good to make sure that you commit often and also sync between the branches and repositories if necessary, because otherwise, yeah, it can get quite messy. Yep. The last one I wanted to show you now is how to import an existing project, because so here we're basically now reaching the limits of this little interface here, because usually the best way to work with Git is using the command line. But if you have already projects that are on your computer and that you want to now upload to GitHub, you can do that by File and then Add a local repository. And then it asks you to pick a path, like to choose to find the repository, basically. So I'm going to, I should have prepared that before. What do we do? I need to create first a test repository. Sorry for that. Let me just cancel that. Should have prepared that, but did not. So let me create in here. Title folder. And then let me just create a file in here. No, test, another test. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back. So this is my repository that I want to upload. So then I select it, I click open here. And then I click on add repository. And then it will tell me that this is not yet a Git repository because I have not initialized Git in it. So basically what I then just click is create repository. Do that. It basically asks me to add a description or other files, but you can just, for now, create this repository. And then it tells you can publish this repository. It's another commit, basically, and you do that. And then if you go onto your GitHub, it should be under your repositories. Yeah, there it is. So that's a way of importing repositories. And now we're actually, so if you do that, you move directly into this repository. We're now in here. Yep. Yeah. So if you do that, there's one thing you have to bear in mind, which is that Git has a limit to the sizes of the file that you upload. So it's really for small scripts and text files and not for data, basically. So you have, I think, the limit is for user accounts or for repositories is 10 gigabyte, and for individual files, it's 100 megabyte. There's other solutions for large data, for example, Git LSF, so large data storage, which basically allows you to create links to external repositories that you can then commit. But yeah, that's beyond the scope of this introduction. But if you're interested in that, you can have a look at that. And then, so let's say you have actually some really large files in a repository and you want to have this repository tracked on GitHub Online. What you can do is create a .gitignore file. And in this file, you list all the files or folders that should not be tracked by Git. And you have to do that before you first commit them. So once you've committed them, they will be tracked. So it's a good idea to start actually with a gitignore file and then add files that should not be tracked and then commit, basically. And I'll show you that now. For the test repository. Let me open that in VS Code. So this is very empty, but I create, and it's .gitignore. And then I can have a file test2.md. So I save this. And then if I create test2.md, save this, it should show me, yeah, it shows me that I have created a gitignore file, but it doesn't show me the test2.md. So it shows me that I have the gitignore file where I added test2.md, but it doesn't track the test2.md. So if you have large data, for example, like PDFs of books or something, that would be too large, you can basically ignore them this way. And then, so once you have made a significant contribution on GitHub, let's say you're publishing the analysis or the code to a paper or something, it's also good practice to add a license file. So you just do that by adding a file called license.md, and Git will already recognize that and give you some options for licenses. And I'm not a lawyer, but different licenses can be found here. And there's also like license decision trees where you can basically, go through the levels, and then it suggests some licenses for, your needs, basically. Cool. Are there any questions at this point? Cool. So then let's go through the Git horror, which is merge conflicts. So Rini has already alluded to that. So let's say we have the following scenario. So we have a file where we have 2 lines. So the first one is to be or not to be. That is the question. So someone makes a copy of this, like a fork of this, and changes the second line to catnip the question. But this next person here makes also a fork of this, and doesn't really take into account that there have been interim changes, and changes the second line as well. And then the question is like, how do we, unify these 2 files? And that's called a merge conflict. And we are going to create one of our own now. And yeah, usually they require manual resolution. And also they often require the command line. So you will be able to solve small merge conflicts where you can just go through and like accept it, by deleting lines. But like for really large ones, you will have to use the command line. So I would like you to now go to your repository, and I'll do that with you, but let me see how I set that up, because I really want to create a good merge conflict. Yeah, so let's go to our training repo. And I'm going to create a new file called merge conflict. Merge conflict. .md. And I add something in the first line, conflict, and I commit this. Oh, great. I've done this before, apparently. Let me go back to .mb. Where is my merge conflict file? Yeah, I've given this course a couple of times. So I have it now here, my merge conflict file. So then I'm creating from my main branch, a merge conflict branch. Basically creating a copy of this branch. And then in my merge conflict branch, I'm adding a second line. Implementing this. And then I'm going back to my main branch and just add a second line. And then if I want to create, let me go pull request. Yeah, exactly. It will tell me that I can't really merge. So to summarize, I created a copy of this main branch that I called merge conflict, and I made changes in the same file on the same line in both. So that's the only difference. But this is already enough so that I can't merge this. So I have to resolve the problem that I have now two different second lines in these two files. So it tells me that cannot automatically merge. So I can create the pull request. I'll do that. And it will tell me that I cannot merge it. But I can here, because it's a small merge conflict, I can resolve conflicts. Wow. Okay. So I click resolve conflicts. And then, yeah, so then it gives me this. And here, so the way you read this is like, here you have these little, so this is one, this is the merge conflict branch. And this is the main branch. So this is merge conflict, this one, and this is main one, this one. And now I can decide what I want to do. And so what it's going to do, it's like really merging this text file. So I need to also, let's say I want both. So then I need to delete this part. I need to delete this part, and I need to delete this part. And then I have the two of them. And then I can mark this as resolve, commit, merge. And then I have both lines basically in it.
So does that then only update it in main and it leaves the merge conflict in your merge conflict branch as it was?
I think so, actually. That's a good question. We can check that. Oh, maybe I merged it the other way around. So here we have, no, because I merged it, I think I merged it the other way around. I made a pull request from merge to main from main to merge conflict, I think. Let's check it. Yeah. So I made the pull request from main to merge conflict. If you make it from merge conflict to main, it only updates it in the one that you're pulling the changes into. It stays the old way in the other branch. And I think you can actually see this. Let me see. So not in both branches. Settings. No. Where can you see this? There was
I think history.
Yeah, history too, but there's a really nice way usually of showing the different branches, like pages. No, that's not the one. Security insights. It's in insights, I think. Where you can see network, maybe. Dependency graph. Where you see basically the different branches evolving and then how they, yeah, you see it, for example, here. So I merged main into merge conflict. You see that here. So all changes are in merge conflict, and main remains the, where I just had one change. But it's like I'm under insights network. Yeah. And then I think it shows only a couple of days or weeks back. But yeah. So yeah, this is merge conflicts, and don't worry about like creating them painstakingly because they will just happen. I think it's unavoidable. Yeah, so like I said, this is again like this little image, and I found it very confusing at the beginning, but it's really like these equal signs separated the two branches, and then you have one here that this marks the main, this part marks the main branch, and this part marks the other branch. And you have to make sure to delete these ones because otherwise they will be in your file. So it's literally you're working on the file here. Yep. And yeah, to avoid merge conflict, like always make sure to sync your branches before opening a pull request and make small and incremental commits. Yeah. So then we're almost done actually. Yeah, so what I've shown you today is probably 10% of what you can do with GitHub. Like I said, this website basically is not only a folder on GitHub, it's also hosted on GitHub Pages. So they do that for you and make it really easy to host web pages out of folders. You can publish on GitHub, and then you can also contribute to open source. There's many ways to contribute to open source. So the first one is, of course, code, but then another good way is also just writing documentation. So if you have a programming language that you feel really secure in, or like feel secure in, but maybe not as secure enough to contribute to code, you can also write documentation. And then I wrote some good Git practices, make small changes, commit frequently, and write good commit messages. Yeah, so then it's also good practice, one issue, one branch, one PR. Like I said, always either respond to an issue, and then if you make a change, create a branch, and if you make one isolated change and merge that back, basically, to not mix it up too much with other changes. And like I said, usually the out-facing branch, or the branch that is basically in production, is always the main branch. And then usually you have a second branch that is called development branch, where you have like beta changes, so changes that are under testing, or that you're quite happy with, but you're still going over. And you merge from the development branch into the main branch, and then you have additional smaller branches where you make smaller changes and tests. And they get first merged into the development branch and then into the main branch. So that's how they do it basically in industry, or when you work on a toolbox or something. Be nice and polite when collaborating. Yeah, avoid committing directly into the main branch. Better have feature branches or also a dev branch. That is basically your collection branch before the main branch. If you want to get started, look for good first issues for beginners. Assign several reviewers for PRs. It's especially important if you actually have merge rights, but then you want to make sure that you have a second set of eyes, basically, and never merge your own PRs unless you work, on your own repository. Nobody else works on it. But yeah. Some more resources. So Hacktoberfest, that's pretty much almost over. So it's basically the month of October where you're challenged to create a merge for pull requests, and then you get a badge or something. There's awesome for beginners. So the awesome lists are basically GitHub repositories that collect information, resources, tools about a topic, and they're massive and very good resources. The Turing Way is a book that is hosted on GitHub about reproducible science. And they have book dashes, so basically weeks where you come together as a community online and work on a chapter of the Turing Way. So it's very easy to actually become contributor to the Turing Way. I would recommend to check that out. Yep. And yeah, you've mastered the course pretty much. And we're done. Are there any questions? One thing I wanted to show you actually, so GitHub is always evolving. So if you go onto this code tab, you have here something that's called code spaces. No code spaces. Yeah, create code space on master. And what it basically does is it opens a code environment in your browser where you can work on the code that is in the repository. So this is Python code, but it opens a VS Code environment, and you can run the code in your terminal or like run it here. So that's really cool, actually. You have to be careful because so I think everybody has some free hours for this one, and after a while you would get billed, but definitely you have some monthly free hours. But yeah, it's good to maybe don't do all your analysis in it, because at some point you might get paid for it, but you might get billed for it, but you can at least check out some some code, and I'll close this down here now. Yeah. Let me close this code space. Are there any questions?
Johanna, so just to clarify, the conflicts where you have to merge conflicts or resolve them, that only happens if you're working on the same file.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
It happens if you have, pretty much.
Okay. So if you're working on a non-overlapping piece of that repository, then it's okay.
Exactly.
Like if you get.
Yeah. So you've basically seen that. Like I actually can probably accept some of you've all created pull requests here, and I can probably accept them independently because I ask you to create separate files. That's why I do that actually. I ask you to do that. No, not the merge conflict one. But if I would ask you to work on the same file, then I would create a merge conflict. Yeah. But it's exactly as you stated. So as long as you work on different files, it's fine. Any other questions? Cool. So either all stunned or it was very clear. So I'll pick my favorite. But yeah, feel free to still create pull requests. Or also feel free to hit me up for anything else. I'm around pretty much. Cool.
Thank you. This is great.
Good to hear. Yeah, good. I think this recording will probably be populated, so you can go back. You can also just go through the website, so most of the stuff should be there. And yeah, then I wish you a nice rest day, pretty much. Cool.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. That's
Bye.
great. Bye-bye.